Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, Greg Anthony here. I'm glad you're back on the Investigative Journal on this Wednesday, June 21st, 2017 day on our calendar. Glad you're back, and we're running a pledge drive all month, and you can go to www.arcticbeacon.com, and you can get shows going back well over a decade regarding what I term the Vatican-led New World Order. Now, many of my listeners dub this show the alternative to the alternative media. And it's for good reason, because if you look at the mainstream media, which I worked in, it is completely controlled now. It is an amazing fake news organization from top to bottom, whether you go to the left-wing channels or the right-wing channels. Then you get to the internet and you find that years ago, they knew when the internet first started coming out, and I was around when the first wave of internet broadcasting started and was on some of the bigger channels. And YouTube was not even really a player back then. And so I've got to know up close and personal a lot of the shills, a lot of the COINTEL people. When I started working with them, I didn't realize what they were doing and where the money was coming from. So what the Jesuits and the people that are controlling this elite one world order, one world religion push, they knew they had to control the internet, so they'd get people like Alex Jones and others to lead the way, lead you down that rabbit hole, so you never really seek the truth. And that's only up to you. I mean, I'm only like a guidepost to help you move along. And what you got to do is start with certain subjects that interest you. Like, for example, history tells us that the Vatican is always backs fascist regimes, right? Talk about Hitler, we talk about other things they do in Africa, etc., etc. And in fact, they've told us that even in their publications that fascism is the government of choice for them. They tell you that. Now, did you know that in 1941 there was a booklet written by Edith Moore? It's called No Friend to Democracy. And I think it's a really good read for Americans trying to uncover Vatican and Jesuit orders, their secret role in the Illuminati and the New World Order, bent on destroying the U.S. from within. Now, the Vatican, she says in her book, has been closely collaborating with fascist regimes for centuries. No Friend of Democracy. It's a little booklet written in 1941. The book never has been given much publicity. I wonder why. Just like the show never gets much publicity. And why it's important that you go to that donate button on www.arcticbeacon.com. Press that so I can get a donation. It goes directly to me if you do that. If you go to First Amendment and do their donate, it goes to the station, not to the hosts. And kind of like the chicken and the egg, got to have a host to have a station, and you got to have a station if you're a host. So go ahead and go to my website at arcticbeacon and donate what you can this month so I can keep this show going. Now, for anyone interested in this book never was given much publicity in major U.S. book outlets, details the Vatican and Jesuit orders' undercover work with the likes of Stalin, Mussolini, and Hitler, to name a few. Now, for anyone interested in finding out how the evil Vatican and their henchmen in the Jesuit order have no morals, speak out of both sides of their mouth, cutting deals with fascist regimes for wealth and religious power, while also working with democratic regimes, talking completely different lingo. And this booklet aims at helping to explain how Roman Catholicism, as church, creed, and conscience, has operated in relation to the war and the fascist forces that brought it about. It provides a selection of material showing how fascism and Nazism uprooted the free movements of civilization and established their own authoritarian power, with the church always right at their side. Boy, incredible, isn't it? Incredible story. And what I say is go to that book and get that. I think you'll enjoy it. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is I'm just going to move on a little bit. Now, how has the Jesuit order really taken control of the U.S.? Now, once upon a time back in 2008, I interviewed a former bishop, explain this to me. And he was Bishop Gerard Bouffard of Guatemala. And I asked, the questions we asked were, why the Sons of Lucifer? Why the Sons of Lucifer, better known as the Society of Jesus, have been so successful at blocking the Protestant Reformation and infiltrating American society at every level. This bishop, Gerard Bouffard of Guatemala, gave us reasons after leaving the Vatican, where he actually worked with the Pope and Jesuit Black Pope. Bouffard, at the time I interviewed him back in 2008, he's living in Canada, and he said the Vatican and Jesuit order are the real spiritual controllers of the Illuminati and New World Order, while the Jesuits, through the Black Pope, known as the Jesuit General, actually control the Vatican hierarchy and the Roman Catholic Church. Now, you can Google Gerard Bouffard, and I've even got a couple of radio shows with him. I got articles about it. He's also put out other things. And go and do that. So I'm giving you a couple guidelines here. Go to that booklet on democracy, the No Friend of Democracy by Edith Moore, and go to this article when you get time. Now, Bouffard is a born-again Christian, okay, and he bases his conclusions after 6 years as a Vatican priest, assigned the task of passing daily sensitive correspondence between the Pope and the leaders of the Jesuit order residing at Borgo Santo Spirito Cinque near St. Peter's Square. Now, I know exactly where that building is because I lived near there for 7 years and walked by it many times. Now, regarding the Black Pope and his Jesuit brothers, here's just a tidbit on what he said. He said, yes, the man known as the Black Pope controls all major decisions made by the Pope, and he in turn controls the Illuminati. Now, it's interesting. Now we have a Jesuit Pope and a Black Pope, so they kind of work together, I think, right? And you can catch, I did that show years ago, and it's still on the web, so go and catch Gerard Bouffard, Gerrard, G-E-R-A-R-D, Bouffard, B-O-U-F-F-A-R-D, former Bishop of Guatemala. Now, let's touch back on a lot of different things. I don't think people really understood what the movie Angels and Demons really was trying to do. Now, back years ago, I looked at this, and I was talking to people in Rome at the time, actually when Tom Hanks and Ron Howard went to the Vatican, and really the main drift of this story is that the Vatican was being infiltrated by the Illuminati, and they have to fight this evil. And the movie claims the Illuminati is trying to destroy the Vatican, when in fact, the Vatican is the Illuminati. Tom Hanks and Ron Howard, you should know this, but you get paid a lot of money to slant the truth, right? And they're a big part of the movie propaganda, happy to collect millions in dirty Vatican money. And I imagine it was funded much by them. And the Hollywood movie came out in June of 2009. It's a perfect example of how the Vatican uses money and corrupt power to sway public opinion in the mother beast's direction. The Illuminati is the Vatican, folks, and the Vatican is the Illuminati. But in this movie, they twist the facts by telling the world the Roman Catholic Church is a life and death struggle to save its very soul from the evil forces of these people trying to destroy the good old boys, these good old priests at the Vatican. What nonsense that is, isn't it? But then people will believe anything if the lie is big enough. And this story ranks among the biggest propaganda movies ever scripted by the Vatican Hollywood partners. Money buys power, but it also buys a good reputation, and that's exactly what the Jesuits and the Vatican are banking on, as the Vatican, immensely rich and just as deceitful, guides itself through history with this maxim: good reputation is better than a golden belt. As Edmund Paris reminds us in his book, The Secret History of the Jesuits, Vatican domination always assumes spiritual and humanitarian pretexts proclaimed urbi and orbi by an intense propaganda which gold-plated belt provides, and the good reputation thus maintains the inflow of gold to the said gold belt. So go and you can get that movie online and watch it and see how they twist the truth. Now, another story that seems to always get forgotten. This idea that the Vatican is not involved in Freemasonry. And when I was in Rome, there was a man who was the head of the Masonic, P2 Masonic Lodge during that huge scandal, bank scandal. I happened to be there. And that's really what got me involved in seeing the dirty work the Vatican was doing through this Vatican bank scandal when I was there. And I also got to read about and to find out more about the life of Licio Gelli, a very powerful connection between the Vatican CIA, the Reagan administration, and even up till he died, I think a couple of years ago. He was a CIA asset, and he was working heavily in Rome at the time I was there. Now, he was working primarily as a double agent with Vatican blessings. Gelli's activities illustrate how America really has been deceived by its religious and political leaders. And I can remember even trying to do a story to send to the States regarding some of this, and it was never, ever approved. It never got out of Rome. Now, to understand the sly activities of a guy like Gelli and the CIA and how he worked for the American government, in fact, he was a good friend of Ronnie Reagan. And if you look at some of the inauguration pictures, he's right there in the front row, right behind Ronald. Interesting. So he must have been a pretty important dude. Now, he was born in 1919 in a place called Pistoia, Tuscany. He's publicly known as an Italian financier, chiefly known for his role in the Banco Ambrosiano Vatican bank scandal. He was also revealed in 1981 as being the worshipful master of the clandestine Masonic Lodge, Propaganda Due, P2. But behind the convenient cover of a financier, Gelli's clandestine role for the CIA and the Vatican is virtually unknown to the average American. That's why I'm bringing it up. And I've done many shows on Licio Gelli over the years through people I've known in Rome, etc. And like I said, he was a good friend of Reagan and was seen pictured behind the former president at his inauguration. So, what do I want you to do? Why don't you write that down, Licio Gelli, and start doing some research, and you will, through him, find out that the Vatican is involved in Freemasonry, and many of the priests are also involved. Now, when I was in Rome, first-hand knowledge, articles came out in the newspapers in Rome and Italy and France regarding over 150 high-level bishops and priests and cardinals involved as members of Freemasonry in P2 and other lodges, and they were even giving their code names. In fact, Cardinal Marcinkus from Chicago, who was the head of the Vatican Bank during this scandal, his name was, what was it? I forget it. Grizzly Bear or something. No, that's not right. I've forgotten. But it was some name like that. Because he's a big man. He was really big. He's like 6'5", 300 pounds or something. Big guy. But what about this? Do you remember the story? And I always wondered about this. Remember when James Traficant, former U.S. Congressman from Ohio, was no friend? Remember when he was put in prison? Now, he was no friend of the Vatican and New World Order, despite his Catholic roots and education, so they had to get him, I think. Now, Traficant was known for his controversial speeches and flamboyant style, often hitting the New World Order would hurt most in their fat cat money belt. Now, according to the record, in 2002, Traficant was indicted on federal corruption charges for taking campaign funds for personal use. Again, he opted to represent himself like he did in the 1983 trial, insisting that the new trial was part of a vendetta against him dating to his 1983 trial. Now, during the 2002 case, according to court records, Traficant frequently argued with the judge and screamed at prosecutors and witnesses. So, here's another little story that often gets forgotten about, and it's maybe good to go back and look up James Traficant and find out some more information about him. Now, there's another guy, I remember way back when, I won't even get to Father John Deere, but maybe this is not his biggest story. But I wrote a story about him one time, and I said, is Jesuit Father John Deere, that's D-E-A-R, another sly fox, in the henhouse? He both castigates and praises the order for the purpose, I think, of confusing people. This is a perfect example of maybe what they do. About the Jesuits' order, main historical purpose of infiltration, duplicity, and political meddling. And folks, like I've said many times, they never stop their Hegelian dialectic nonsense. And the black-robed Jesuits, again, are at it. Well, they're at it right now in Washington. You can see what's going on there. A lot of bickering and arguing and words and all these things going on between Trump and the Democrats. But you know what happens? Nothing's getting done, really. Always doing some executive orders and a lot of talk. But all of this major legislation that they want to pass seems to never get done. And could that be that that's what they're all about? Because they control both sides. And both sides work together. Now, at first glance, we looked at Father Deere, this time spreading propaganda in a January 2008 article written by Jesuit priests, this in the Catholic Reporter by John Deere. At first glance, the article entitled, "The Society of Jesus Should Renounce All Military Ties," appears to be anti-Jesuit. But when you read closely, it's another Jesuit attempt to confuse people about the real purpose and intent of the Society of Jesus. The writer, sly as a fox in the henhouse, praises and castigates the Jesuits in the same article, praising the works of founder Ignatius Loyola and the order's historical main purpose, while at the same time denouncing so-called rogues or bad seeds in the order. See, they want to put the blame on a few. But they constantly say this whole idea since Ignatius Loyola was a great idea. But Ignatius Loyola and the original idea of the Jesuits was to kill Protestants. So they blame it on rogues. And it reminds me of when we were talking about angels and demons. And we mentioned Alex Jones. He's been in the news lately because he's got together with Megyn Kelly to be on an NBC show. And, of course, that was a bunch of chaos as well. But Alex Jones, back when I knew him back in, 10, 15 years ago, he said there was nothing wrong. The Vatican, I don't know what you're talking about, Greg, or you other people. This Vatican story is crazy. And the people that do it are crazy, and they're all working for the Jews. They're all working for the Jews and hate the Vatican, and they ought to be stopped. And the Vatican, as Alex was saying, were just some old priests. They don't have much money, he was saying. But he's changed his tune right now because what they're doing is he's saying that Pope Francis is an evil man and he's trying to destroy the good side of the Vatican. So it's that blaming of a few, but basically condoning all of the violence and all of the killing and all of their actions as it goes on today. So it's what they're doing is leading you to they seemingly are criticizing themselves, but they're really not. They're just holding out a few people to take the blame. Now, the first question must be asked regarding John as Father Deere. Why would the Vatican hierarchy allow a Jesuit who takes the strict vow of obedience to denounce the order, unless it was approved for another motive? Now, that is something for you to study, because you can go back in history already all the way back to a number of anti-Jesuit critics who were actually Jesuits. And they do it today. There's a few out there right now who are, well, I don't know how many totally, but there's some people who are anti-Jesuit that actually are Jesuits or working with them so they can control even the negative role and spin it to something crazy like acting as if, hate the Jesuits, get them kicked out, but I believe in white supremacy. Now, so go look at Father John Deere. You can probably Google him and find some things on him. But really the bigger story is, like I said, why would the Vatican answer this question, hierarchy, allow Jesuits who take the strict vow of obedience to denounce the order unless it was approved for another motive? And what's that motive? So that'd be a good homework assignment, wouldn't it? I think it'd be a great one. I remember this story. It never got many legs, and they were using the Logan Act, and the Logan Act has never really been used. But anyway, it was good thinking, and a New York Senate candidate at the time wanted all Jesuits in the U.S. registered as foreign agents under the local Logan Act. Isn't that interesting? Oh, it never got much, and I remember when I interviewed the guy, I said, hey, this ain't going to go anywhere. And he was the only one I've ever found in New York and around the country that ran on an anti-Jesuit ticket. And he's still around, I know that. Okay? So it's kind of interesting, that story. A lot of these stories that just get lost, don't they? And the CIA has granted the request of a New York State, this candidate. They did to have administrative officials require all Jesuit priests living and working in the United States to register as agents of foreign power, the Vatican State, under the little-known Logan Act. Now, they supposedly granted the request, but it never got done. The Logan Act is in the United States federal law that forbids unauthorized citizens from negotiating with foreign governments. It was passed in 1799 and last amended in 1994. Violation of the Logan Act is a felony punishable under federal law with imprisonment of up to 3 years. I don't think anybody's ever been prosecuted under it. And even the story about Mike Flynn, who was the national security advisor fired by Trump, people are saying, well, let's use the Logan Act. Well, the text of the act is broad and is addressed at any attempt of a U.S. citizen to conduct foreign relations without authority. Boy, that would put all of these guys that we talk about in jail. You know, I can think of a number of priests going back to one that started the School of Foreign Service in Georgetown, and it's still running today and was also on Eisenhower's website, Father Edmund Walsh, who was actually an agent. He used to go to China, Baghdad, Russia. He negotiated the deal with Stalin. This guy violated the Logan Act. He's an American citizen, but he was a CIA spy, covering as a priest. Father Edmund Walsh. Now go check him out. So how much time do I have here? Okay, I got about a minute and a half before the break. Then I'll have some good things for you in the second half. And this idea was pretty good. And the guy was Christopher Strunk, candidate for New York Senate in Brooklyn's 18th district. The only one I ever found that was running on an anti-Jesuit ticket. Strunk, he said this to me way back when. He said, I first became aware of the enormous power wielded in New York State and the country during the 1980s when I was involved in numerous domestic law disputes, said Strunk. After researching the law, I came to the conclusion we are living under canon law, which sparked my interest to research the Jesuits. You go for it, Mr. Strunk. You go for it. Okay, there's a number of the stories forgotten, really, and a number of things you should research, and hopefully you can go back to the show and you can get these names and look up the story, and that'll improve your historical outlook on this, and also it'll lead you in many different directions probably. So hopefully that helped out. And we're going to help you out more in the second half hour on the Investigative Journal, so don't flip the dial, as they used to say. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
All right, that was quick. Quick 3 minutes, and we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on this Wednesday. Keep up with the days, June 21st, 2017. My, do they go by fast. And here we are again, another radio program, and we're doing another pledge drive. So please go to www. And you can spell Arctic, it's ARCTICBEACON.com, and you can get shows going back over a decade in what I call the Vatican-led New World Order on a show that's been called The Alternative to the Alternative News. And I'm going to play a little interview I did way back about 10 years ago on with the guy who gave me that name. And I'll tell you who he is in a minute. But first, don't forget, donate. All those little things I told you about in the first half hour, they don't come easy. You know, I've dedicated a lot of time and effort, and you can't get this show on mainstream. Now, I do want to say that I'm getting my website, I'm going to try to get it revised, updated, a new look, and then also start another site, which is going to be a blog that I'm going to start, a podcast, which is going to be subscription based. Initially, you can get it free if you like it. You can pay a little bit of money, and it's going to be a little bit different, a little bit more factual based on things that I don't have a chance to cover here. And hopefully that show will fund this one. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, sometimes there's a lot of garbage in the news. And before I play that interview I did with the man who gave me the name, my show, the name, The Alternative to the Alternative Media, I just look at I'm just going through the garbage in the news. It's kind of like going through your garbage can and pulling it out. And what do you find? There's some good things. Wheel of Fortune regrets background controversy. Who cares about those people in the Wheel of Fortune? Here's another one. Top news stories. Surveys say this male body type is considered the most attractive. Who cares? What's this one? Well, there's a couple. Well, we got O.J. Simpson's sister sheds light on his life behind bars. Something I couldn't live without, right? Nazi artifacts found in hidden room in Argentina. Wow, did they find Hitler? Remains? And I bet you always wanted to know what was the most popular hotel on TripAdvisor, and it will really surprise you. I don't really care. That's just some of these things. Then they get into some sports stuff. Of course, they're going to get into what's going on with the Trump administration. And let's end it with this one. Where is it? The one I wanted to end it with. Those annoying strings on bananas are actually important. Okay. I guess it has some hidden nutrient factor. But anyway, there's a lot of garbage in the news. And I just wanted to touch on some of it so that you can really see, if you put the two things together, the things I was talking about in the first half hour and some of these things, what would you rather fill your mind with? Here's another one, the most shocking scandals at the Cannes Film Festival, the Cannes Film Festival. So you make that up. You make up your own mind on that one. But anyway, I did want to get to that interview I did with a man by the name of Daryl Eberhardt. He gave my show the name The Alternative to the Alternative Media. He used to come on my show years ago. I haven't kept track of Daryl. He used to do a website called Tackling the Tough Topics. So let's go and see what Daryl Eberhardt had to say about a decade ago.
interruption. However, we were trying an internet connection again, and it wasn't working. So basically, we're going to have to go back to the telephone connection. So I apologize if you didn't catch my opening statements. But let me say this, that my guest today is Daryl Eberhardt. He's a Christian. He's been served in the military for over 20 years and is tackling the tough topics. And that's the name of his website, Tackling the Tough Topics. And he sure does. Let me tell you, we want to talk with Daryl today about the protocols of dying and basically who actually wrote them. He's done a lot of research on that. So what we're going to do is wait for Daryl. And until then, let me say this, that I get a lot of emails, some good, some bad. And I have one here I'd like to read to you. It says, it's from Tim Collins, and we'll do this until we get Daryl on. And in the studio, let me know when Daryl gets on. Basically, Tim says this. He says, "Hi, Greg. I suppose it was inevitable that with the freedom of the Internet, the subject of the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church would finally come under the spotlight, and it would become the focus for discussion and criticism. But Greg,
Max,
what have you taken on? What have you taken on? I'm getting a little bit of an echo. If we could check that in the studio. But anyway, he says, what have you taken on? The I'm hearing something in the background, but anyway, I think I'm on. What have you taken on, Greg? He says, the Roman Catholic Church is a monster spanning the globe, to say nothing of 2,000 years of bloody, violent history. And I just want to comment on that. I say, yeah, it is a huge, huge subject, but when you talk about the driving force behind the New World Order, the World Revolutionary Movement, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, you have to really deal with the Vatican. And so what you do is you try to put them in proper perspective. And so when you look at the driving force behind the Illuminati, being the Luciferian movement that wants to turn the world into a one-world government, a one-world order, boy, this is a bad echo. Could you do something about it in the studio? Because I'm having a heck of a time talking here. Can we do anything? It's very strange. Very, very strange. But anyway, I'm going to try to get through this the best I can. I'm having a terrible time. I can hardly hear anything. But let me know in the studio if you're getting my voice coming over clearly, because we had some problems in the beginning of the show. Can you do that for me? And then try to get rid of this echo. It's driving me crazy. And let me know when Daryl Eberhard is on. Okay? All right. So you know what? I am going to call back in, because this is a terrible connection. And I cannot do this show this way. I'm coming in strong. Called Daryl and told him not to hang up. Okay. So that's basically it. But could you see if you can do something on the echo? It's a little loud. And I'm having a hard time over here. Nothing you can do. Very interesting.
Well, this is Daryl Eberhard. I got cut off for a second. I got the standard, dot.
Yeah. And I'm having a hard time here because I have such an echo that it's very difficult for me. And that's a little better. But anyway, Daryl, I introduced you, and I was into an email here that I'll do in the next hour or so. You know what? Why don't you just begin with, I know you want to talk about the protocols of Zion and other things, so go ahead.
Can you have your guy call me back on your line?
No, I'm fine.
I'm on my cell phone. I got cut off from the landline I'm on, and this cell phone's not real reliable in my basement.
Okay, so you want,
I want your guy to call me back. He said, don't hang up. I'm starting.
Do you want him to call you at 814-886-2857?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll let you hang up, and then the studio will call him. Okay?
Okay. Have your studio call me at that number.
All right, real good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're going to try to get through these technical difficulties today, and if we could just see about that echo. I don't know what is going on with my connection today, but I'm getting a tremendous echo, and it's very difficult to do the show, but I'll do the best I can. Okay, we're going to call Daryl Eberhard back, and then...
Wow, I guess I was having a tough time back then. I really don't remember it. Well, it's 10 years ago. Here, I'm back here in 2017. But anyway, there are some good things. I'm just going to play it through. And I guess the main point is that technology's gotten a lot better. You can just use Skype.
Until we get it back on, it shouldn't be good. Shouldn't be too long. We'll get back to the show. What a rocky beginning today. But, some days are like that. That's what happens in live radio. And I was getting back to this email. And so I was mentioning that when you put the Vatican in proper perspective to understanding the Luciferian movement or the Illuminati, the one world government, one world order, turning the world into a totalitarian state, you have to understand the Vatican's role in that. And basically, they're the fathers of Lucifer. They're the ones who provide the black magic, provide the historical reference to all of this, and become basically quite important as Lucifer's advisors, spiritual advisors here on Earth. And so the Vatican plays a huge role in this by deception, by deceit, by anything possible, a very wealthy organization. And what happens then is they have different orders. The Jesuit order are really their henchmen. And they're the ones that go out through the world, say they're spreading the word of God. Many of the lower level people think they're doing that. But at the high levels, what they're really doing is spreading the word of Lucifer. And so they're basically in charge of many, many things, controlling wars, keeping together the two sides of the wars, understanding how to work all sides against the middle, and basically are a very important organization. So you cannot in the studio. But anyway, what I'm getting at is this, that the Vatican, you need to include them, and they're a very important piece of the puzzle when you're trying to figure out this Luciferian movement, which we call the Illuminati, the New World Order, the World Revolutionary Movement, which has been in existence for thousands of years, and basically has been in existence in our country since the foundation of it. And so it's a huge topic, and Tim, that's why you have to include the Vatican. Now, I said this yesterday, it's very important. It's a huge mistake for those researchers in the world who are trying to figure out what's going on regarding the New World Order. And it's a huge mistake not to really concentrate on the Vatican, the Jesuit order, and other aspects of this Luciferian movement. But it's just as much of a mistake not to reach out to the other tentacles of how this organization really operates, how they use government leaders, how they use Freemasonry. And tell me this, if the Vatican wasn't involved in the New World Order, then remember back in 1982, when the story came out in Rome, I don't even know if you guys in America ever got the story, but I've tried to relay it to you. Why did over 150 high-level Vatican officials get nailed for being involved in Freemasonry? Now, if you read canon law strictly, and if you think the Vatican is a good organization, that's a violation of their own canon law, which calls for excommunication. Now, one of those priests who were outed in two different newspapers in France and in Italy back in the 1980s was ever disciplined. And so you see this kind of connection between high-level Vatican officials. You see it in Freemasonry, and then you see it throughout our world leaders, all controlling, all under this Luciferian movement. And the Vatican is a role, so it's important to concentrate on them. And it's a huge mistake not to think they're very, very important. But it's also a huge mistake to just stop there. Next. Because their tentacles go so far out. The whole organization is a work in progress for thousands of years, and Lucifer is really behind it. And so you need to look at all aspects of this, and then devise questions to figure out who's on what side. And with that, let me get back to Daryl. Daryl, I apologize for all the screw-ups, but sometimes it happens. I was trying to get back onto my internet connection, but I just can't do it, so I'm back on the phone. So how are you today, by the way?
I'm fine, and thanks so much for having me on the Investigative Journal again. And as usual, Greg, I want to urge your listeners to please get up and visit your website. I'm getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah.
I don't know how it sounds to you, but anyway.
No, you sound fine.
I'll back off a little bit on the phone, but okay. I would urge your listeners to please visit your website, arcticbeacon.com. That's like Arctic as in Arctic Circle, but arcticbeacon.com, and read your many articles that you have up there, and you do have quite a bit about the Jesuits and Papal Rome, and also that people would sign up to be a monthly supporter of your work, Greg, because you're one of the very few broadcast hosts that has the courage to expose Papal Rome and the Jesuit order. I'm tempted sometimes to say Papal Rome and her Jesuit order. However, boy, I'm getting a lot of echo. Does your studio know if that's feeding back on the...
No, it sounds fine in my ear.
Going then. But like I said, you have the courage to expose them. And I started to say, I was going to say Papal Rome and her Jesuit order, but actually the Jesuit order took over Papal Rome sometime around the Council of Trent, because the Roman Catholic Church, the Reformation was pulling a lot of people away, and as you know, Greg, they had to come up with something to slow the Reformation down, and the Inquisition and torture and mass murder of Bible-believing Christians helped to some degree, but they also got into the theological realm, trying to sow theological viruses, and that would be a topic for some other day. But anyway, you've got a lot of good articles posted up there. You've been kind enough to post a few of my articles on your website with some some brief introductions by you. So, again, as you pointed out, you can't ignore papal Rome. They controlled all of Europe for almost 1,000 years, where they crowned kings, deposed kings and emperors, and for anyone to look at them as if or treat them lightly as if they're nothing in this gigantic geopolitical power and financial game, I think they're going to really miss out on who the top controllers are at the top of the New World Order pyramid. And as you pointed out, Greg, it's key to understand that they control these things through secret societies. And if you look at your top intelligence agencies throughout the world, you're going to find out that there's a whole lot of high-level Freemasons and a whole lot of, high-power-rolling Knights of Malta in charge of not just the CIA, but MI5 and 6, and, of course, during World War II, even Soviet and German intelligence had a lot of these guys. So it's through these secret societies that they can really control nations, and I think you would agree 100% with that.
Yeah, and the real interesting thing here that people need to understand, and what happens is that when you try to piece together, I had an email that was pretty good at this point, how can you take on such a huge subject? And it's a huge subject, but you have to piece it apart and take it one step at a time. But when you look at this, I try to basically look at the foundation of what's happening in our world. What is this New World Order? What is the one world government, one world religion? What really is it behind the scenes? And I think it all boils down to a Luciferian creed, a way of looking at things differently than people look at God's way of running the universe and the world. And so we have this evil that's been coming down for 2,000 years, and it's not just, it includes so many different organizations. And when we start in America, we have to start basically when our country was founded. And the one thing people have to understand, I think, Daryl, is that the Vatican plays a key role, as I call the fathers of Lucifer, the people behind the scenes that control this kind of organization as if they were gods. And when these Luciferians look at Lucifer, they look at him as a god. And so the Vatican takes on that very special role, very powerful role behind the scenes for these people in the know who really understand, are working under this Luciferian evil doctrine. Now, it's hard for people to really understand and to really comprehend how evil this is, and they can't quite, and I think it's hard to get your mind around the first idea, and that is, how can people be this way? How can priests hide behind robes saying they're God-loving and people, and then instigate wars, kill people in the most hideous of manners? How can leaders lie to their people saying they're Christians? How can Muslim leaders lie by saying they're Muslims when they're actually Luciferian? And so that is difficult. But once you figure that out, then you begin to break this thing down piece by piece, and you're trying to do that. What do you think about those statements?
I agree with you 100%. And one thing that we all need to realize is that, and we've brought this up several times before, Greg, and I'm sure you have on other broadcasts, is that we Americans, sadly, are very history challenged, and it's mostly not our fault because, I took history courses in college, and nowhere did they tell you the truth about Lincoln's assassination. They would give you, the battles, the key battles like in the Civil War, the key generals on both sides, but they didn't tell you who was fomenting the war, who was operating behind the scenes and in the shadows. And the same thing happened also with World War I and World War II, two wars that took a lot of civilian lives, especially World War II. And again, the key workings of secret societies like high-level Freemasons and a lot of Roman Catholic Knights of Malta were controlling the intelligence services of both the USA. You had William Wild Bill Donovan in the U.S. You had in Soviet Union a Knight of Malta named Prince Anton Turkel. And then you had a Roman Catholic Knight of Malta in charge of German intelligence, at least on the Eastern Front, named General Reinhard Gehlen, who, by the way, came over and helped set up the modern CIA. Donovan was in charge of the old, what they called Office of Strategic Services, OSS. So these guys are all over the map in World War I and World War II, and we have communications that have been exposed between the Pope and some of the princes of the Austro-Hungarian Empire that shows very clearly that the Pope, I forget his name right now, I think it was one of the Piuses, but whoever was Pope right at the time of World War I, he basically told the Austro-Hungarian Empire, hey, it's time to go kick, of the Serbs because they're getting too powerful. And then, of course, World War II, it's very clear that you have Jesuits all over the place. And then you have a Roman Catholic Knight of Malta named Franz von Papen, and the Roman Catholic Centrum Party throwing their full support to Hitler at a key time to give him full dictatorial powers. They put him into power, and they made sure he had full dictatorial powers. So they're all over the map on World War II. And I don't think we can understand history, church history, European history, unless we, number one, have an understanding of the Reformation, Counter-Reformation, and number two, unless we have an understanding of how these secret societies worked around World War I and World War II to help foment them and then orchestrate them to kill as many of basically Papal Rome's enemies as they could.
Right. And, a question that I'd like to talk about before we get into, we got a good hour and a half or so we got some time to talk about Tex Mars and the Protocols of Zion and actually what you found out about who wrote them. But
okay, so we're just about out of time. I got 30 seconds. Now, Daryl Eberhardt is one of the good guys. I'm telling you, he's honest, and he was really inspiring in my life to research more, and I used to enjoy immensely interviews I did with him. And I'll have to check up and see how he's doing. He's on the East Coast, and if anybody out there catches his work, I'm not sure if the website's even up, let me know. But hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll play more as the days go on with some of these older interviews, and maybe we can find Daryl and update everything and see how things are going. That'd be great. And there's a bunch of other people I could do that with as well. But listen, thanks for listening. Don't forget, hit the donate button at arcticbeacon.com. Help me keep the show on the air. I appreciate it. Really, I do. And come back tomorrow for another edition of the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.